O Pioneers opens up with the illness of Alexandra Bergson's father. He knows he's not going to be around much longer and that he needs to entrust his farm that he's worked so hard to get to Alexandra. And he has two sons who are older than Alexandra, but he knows that she feels more bonded and drawn to the land just as he has in his time that he's worked there. And one of the sentences that I really think sums up how Alexandra feels about the land, she says, "You feel that properly Alexandra's house is the big out of doors, and that is in the soil that she expresses herself the best." So this isn't, a grand tale, sweeping tale of how someone kind of picks himself up by their bootstraps. It's more a series of 5 novellas almost to show these certain significant events that happen in Alexandra's life, and you don't see the events that happen in between. You don't see the links that happen, but for the sake of the story, for the way that Cather wanted this portrayed, that's all right. It doesn't bother me, simply because her writing is so beautiful. This writing, I wanted to cry while I was reading, and I didn't know how else to deal with all the emotions and just the beauty that she was conveying in these different parts. She has such a way about writing about the land and portraying the land and making it so vivid and evocative that I felt like I was right there in the prairie. I could feel the wind around me and the grass, crunching underneath my feet, and I could smell the different plants and feel the heat and the warmth of the sun. Cather's writing is kind of unlike any other writing I've ever read before. So like I said, this is not always plot driven, but there are certain hints throughout, the beginning and the middle of the novel of a big event that's going to happen. You can't tell what it is, but you can tell there's some kind of almost foreshadowing about that happening. And I don't want to give too much of the plot. I don't want to tell much more of the plot because it just would ruin your experience of reading this novel. So I told you, like in the beginning, what happens, but I think that's all that I'll say about the plot. But what was more significant to me about this book was the writing. The writing made this book for me. It wasn't necessarily maybe what I would have chosen to happen in the story, but the writing really stood up on its own. So all of these different events happen to the different characters in this book, but in the end, the land is the same. The land is a character in and of itself, and you see how different characters maybe connect with it or don't, or maybe even feel trapped by it. This is a story of contrasts, of speed and slowness, of old age and youth, of passion and steadiness, and deprivation versus entitlement. So like I said, Alexandra's father decides the farm should go to her, and you see how she views the land as opposed to how her brothers view the land. And I want to read a quote to you. There's a certain point where her brothers have gone to go swimming in a lake nearby, and it says, "That evening, after she had washed the supper dishes, Alexandra sat down on the kitchen doorstep while her mother was mixing the bread. It was a still, deep-breathing summer night, full of the smell of the hayfields. Sounds of laughter and splashing came up from the pasture, and when the moon rose rapidly above the bare rim of the prairie, the pond glittered like polished metal, and she could see the flash of white bodies as the boys ran about the edge or jumped into the water. Alexandra watched the shimmering pool dreamily, but eventually her eyes went back to the sorghum patch south of the barn where she was planning to make her new pig corral." So you see in this passage that the brothers are almost immune to the land. They're enjoying having a good time swimming together and are just so in the moment, whereas Alexandra has this bigger picture about what she should be doing with her time there, and that every moment counts. And it's really significant to be a part of this experience of living on the land. Alexandra is a free thinker, and she thinks a lot differently than other people there, and she's so influenced by the land that it's almost intuitive to her, these decisions that she makes about their farm and the ways that they'll continue to make decisions. And another quote I'd like to read to you is about Alexandra again. And it says, Alexandra drew her shawl closer about her and stood leaning against the frame of the mill, looking at the stars which glittered so keenly through the frosty autumn air. She always loved to watch them, to think of their vastness and distance, and of their ordered march. It fortified her to reflect upon the great operations of nature, and when she thought of the law that lay behind them, she felt a sense of personal security. That night she had a new consciousness of the country, felt almost a new relation to it. Even her talk with the boys had not taken away the feeling that had overwhelmed her when she drove back to the Divide that afternoon. She had never known before how much the country meant to her. The chirping of the insects down in the long grass had been like the sweetest music. She had felt as if her heart were hiding down there, somewhere with the quail and the plover and all the little wild things that crooned or buzzed in the sun. Under the long, shaggy ridges, she felt the future stirring. I'd like to read one last quote to you, and this is about another character named Marie. And it says, but she could not stay in the house this evening. Where should she go? She walked slowly down through the orchard where the evening air was heavy with the smell of wild cotton. The fresh, salty scent of the wild roses had given way before this more powerful perfume of midsummer. Wherever those ashes of rose balls hung on their milky stalks, the air about them was saturated with their breath. The sky was still red in the west, and the evening star hung directly over the Bergsons' windmill. Oh, it's so beautiful! If you have not read any Willa Cather, I highly recommend you read it. Like I said, the plot may not necessarily be something that would necessarily draw you in, but the writing is so superb that hopefully will make the book for you. One last element that I was thinking about as I was reading this was remembering my time reading The Shepherd's Life by James Rebanks, and how he talks about being hefted, being so bonded to the land. And I think this is a great example of an early American novel. Kind of the pioneer's view of the land was that it was a gift and you should be grateful, and that working the land is a blessing, and that it's something that you should not take for granted, and you should work as hard as you can to make yourself succeed. So it's really a picture of a significant and unique time in the United States. And I would love to discuss these different ideas with you guys. I hope that this has been interesting and helpful. Let me know the other Willa Cather that you have read if you've read other ones. And I'll definitely be picking up more Willa Cather in the future. So I hope you guys have a lovely day, and I will see you for another video soon. Bye-bye.